Okay, so the title of the session is Reimagining the East African Regulatory Framework for MedTech. I already explained sort of a broader framework, broader idea we are going to do. The the regulation has standards and their role in local and global innovation. We all aware that the regulations play a really critical role in the supporting and facilitating the innovations. They are developed to ensure the development of a safe, effective products, therapies, and services for all. We all aware of their role in the different areas. In healthcare industry, the regulation and standards are a lot more critical because they play a insignificant role in in various vertical as well as horizontal scales. So they are start from the almost the lab to the to the customer. All the value chain is it's governed by the regulations and standards. Also in terms of the processes, all of that has been governed by the regulation and the standards. Is it a necessary as but a complex institution? The critical point is that which Dr. Mania mentioned about the power and politics. They are integral for the standards and regulations. Though you will, some of the standards and regulation acts as the entry barriers. Some of them acts as take for example ISOs. They add a cost to the product development. Sometimes the WHO pre-qualification, they create an entry barrier. Not all the companies can go for those sort of a tendering. So they have a role, but they are also have a role in terms of making it difficult for the different entrepreneurs to access the markets and enter the markets as well as go into the shape their products innovation trajectories. So the key question is how to manage the evolution of medtech regulatory frameworks in different contexts to facilitate the technological development and innovation in low and middle income countries. So I'm some of that we discuss in our project. The project was about, as I mentioned, health and industry, reimagining the health. Here we are. Thanks, man. That's a magic. So if you didn't understand anything I said so far, this is the slide I was talking about. It happens. I speak sometimes too fast, and the accent is not easy to get. So as I mentioned, in healthcare industry is a necessary yet complex institution which change over time, operate at various vertical and horizontal scales, and are subject to different interpretations and applications. Have a potential to assist manufacturing of and access to the self and efficacious medicines, but the negative role is really critical as well. And specifically, the cost elements, specifically the market entry elements, are really and again influencing the technology transfer, have really negative impact on some of the entrepreneurs as well as the companies operating in the low middle income countries. Though sometimes these regulations, the standards which are developed in high income countries, have been imposed, and that really creates a challenge to greater access. As I mentioned, the key question is how to manage the evolution of medtech regulatory frameworks in different contexts to facilitate the technological development and innovation in low middle income countries. The project. So the project was, we started looking at what's happened during the COVID and after COVID in Kenya and South Africa. Wanted to see what sort of a policy initiatives were taken, how many of them are sustained, and what needs to be done going forward. So the aims of the project were experience and lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic. The idea was how to explore the ways to build an ability to withstand the disruption and stays in the local health industry complexes for pandemic preparedness. We are, our observation that the African countries or the industries for the medtech, as all of you are well aware, are not single discipline or not single sources of knowledge. You need a broad based capability. You saw the startups, pitching of the startups, all of them didn't come from the single organic chemistry or synthetic chemistry. You need materials understanding, you need electronic understanding. So the broad based industrial capabilities are really critical, and how to build those. The third about was the collaborative capabilities and policy learning. So idea was to identify the mix of critical capabilities within and between the state firms and key stakeholders. What is it that makes the difference for your firm to go to the next level? This was the idea behind it. And the supply chains and windows of opportunities. We all aware in during the COVID-19, there are the low income countries were in the back of the queue, all the in terms of PPE, in terms of required medicines, and that means the supply chain, and also the what's happening currently in the global trade is that the supply chains are getting more home based. They are all the countries are trying to bring the supply chains at home. So how should we deal with that? So that was the another idea about looking at the project in this. So I'll just go quickly. We had two work packages. The first one was about investigating the pandemic and post-pandemic industrial health policy and practice initiatives. And the second package, which is we are currently working on, is can we think about a different way of going about developing the African medtech ecosystem? Can in terms of the regulatory, in terms of the industrial policy, in terms of the health and industrial linkages, and that's where the imagination ideas come from. It is about co-creation. That's what we're going to do today. So we have completed the phase one, and in the phase two, we are trying to. We had a workshop in South Africa last month, and we are going to have one. This is another attempt towards that to see can we come up with some of the ideas in terms of the policy initiatives that can have the elements of agility and adaptability for the pandemic preparedness in the future. um, in the examples of industrial response. So we in Kenya, for example, there are really good initiatives. And so Revital, I think his Ronik is going to talk tomorrow. They did, the first African firm to receive WHO pre-qualification for auto disposable syringes. Then there was another company called Hevatele, supplies the oxygen to 200 hospitals. Then there were cross-sector capabilities such as Rivatex East Africa Limited, which converted in cotton lint through various processes to finish fabrics and created the face mask. Uh, Kitu County Textile Center produced face masks. Then there was another example of ultra rare technologies and other Kenyan-owned 3D printing firms. So there were initiatives, there were repurposing of some of the ideas. Similarly, in South Africa, you can see the ventilator project, where there was a big investment from the government to develop those capabilities. Rapid case tests, the medical diagnostics. Again, they came up with the locally developed and regulated rapid test kits. There are similar other examples of the industrial response. But what our reflection shows in terms of the policies is the windows. COVID-19 did create a window of opportunity for the firms. There were no local domestic market was not supplied by the international firms. There were no, and it did sort of encourage some cross-sector examples in terms of repurposing of local industrial capabilities. Some of the companies were doing involved in TB research or others, they're able to come up with the diagnostic test for the COVID-19 and new technological solutions. For example, low manufacturing of essential devices and diagnostic. But what we really found critical, specifically in Kenyan context, is majority of initiatives are truncated. The lessons have been diluted, a lack of politicization of health and policy contestation. So the politicization of health is missing in Kenya. There is it's recorded. So there has to be a political pressure for these initiatives and the government to go forward with, and supporting them. You talk with some of those face manufacturers, what happening with face mask manufacturing, what's happening with their capacity, and all come back saying they have stopped doing what they were doing in the past. So this has been the issue. In terms of the overall policy and regulatory environment, what we found that different medtech need different regulatory pathways and funding mechanism and market shaping mechanism. The deep tech requires a different funding and different regulatory initiatives. There are different types of medtech. For example, there are hard, which has a physical element to it, and there are some medtech which has a soft side, software side of it only. So they require because their returns on investment are different, their markets are different. So the funders has to have a different mentality while supporting both. Similarly, with the regulators, they need new regulatory harmonization across the continent, mainly focus on reducing duplicity to register in different medtech across different African countries to utilize the competencies in the wider markets. Yeah. So these are some of the examples like pool procurement measures. So what we are going forward, our suggestion, and some of this I hope we will discuss it in our small groups right now, is what we need is enabling and discriminating regulation and standard rooted in local context, rather than constraining and indiscriminate. So, for example, some of the product innovation regulations are really critical. It gives rise to the new industries, whereas the process regulations are really sometimes find challenging because they can be indiscriminate, which means that everyone has the same regulation, but even if it doesn't apply to the specific context, and it can be play a constraining role, increases the cost. Specifically, the regulators and policymakers in LMICs should target the optimal regulation that is sensitive to their social needs. Again, it's the in the morning somebody was saying about the copy and paste. I think this is some of really not the ideal way of copy and pasting what are happening in the west to and up trying to apply here. I think there is a way we there is a the expertise available which can give the formulate the regulations which are rooted in the local context. Again, the idea is, the next point again is talk about to grasp that the standards and develop their development in the healthcare technology are their domain and not the international institution and high income countries. So if you go, for example, in WHO, you submit the product and you find the regulators are Africans. I mean, they are African regulators who are designing and checking checking the manufacturing processes. These regulators can work with the local governments to develop the regulations which are rooted and ideal for the local context. You don't need those regulations. Why should a product which is going to be used in Africa needs to have WHO pre-qualification rather than say an African standard and regulations? So this is the point we are trying to make. So idea here is that the LMIC government and policymakers can drive agenda setting and design realistic context sensitive roadmaps. I think this is very critical. If you want to facilitate and encourage the local innovation and manufacturing, the this is the a key point here about having a context sensitive, realistic roadmaps. So, and what is key is avoiding the highly prescriptive, rigid regulatory frameworks. Again, this has been discussed, so I will just go with the next point, which is what we are going to do in this activity. His idea is to basically, this is called a scenario planning workshop idea, and we are going to look at uh, two cases. Basically, looking at to co-create, debate, and refine the future scenarios for priority setting for the in local manufacturing and innovation in it should be a African medtech sector, but that's there. And you want the Richard, you want to take these points? Yeah.
Uh, yeah. A round of applause for Dina. Did we get the gist of what he said? Basically, the purpose of this is to try and reimagine. We reimagine. What if we do things differently? Somebody in the morning called us the brave one, isn't it? We are the brave one. But at what point have we taken our, that being brave? Are we just brave at imagining, at creating concepts? I'm happy what Dean has presented here. Most of it has been presented up there. The last session that we had, we've seen so many innovations, right? The question is, 5 years down the line, will they be there? Uh, our the study that has been presented was premised on imagine I mean pandemics. We had COVID, and particularly for Kenya, we had so many innovation. I'm sure the other countries are the same. The question is, where are they today? And that is exactly what this study was trying to establish. Where are they today? Were they relevant for that pandemic? Were there impediments to making them useful at that pandemic? So really, for this session, the question is for us, not me and Dina, for the entire team, to ask ourselves, uh, how, what can we do? The objective is co-design. The study team and us co-design using two set examples, and I'm so glad again the examples that we had set out. Some of them have been presented by those innovators there. So we are not really even imagining; we're seeing reality happening. So it is us to ask ourselves: um, is it the regulations? Uh, we consider, having looked at what we have, we ask ourselves, is regulatory frameworks that we have, either locally, regionally, or even globally, are they impediments? Do they allow for that rapid response during pandemic times? And then after that, we ask ourselves potential ideas of how do we move forward? How do we become that brave one? You know, and that is why the previous slides, when you saw Dina showed, all the questions are what if? What if we said we wanted one harmonized regulatory system in Africa? Is it workable? Will it create trade wars? Will it create, I mean, what does it mean for both the health sector, the innovators, and commercialization? So it is us to come up with that. So with that, um, before I present the case, um, I see we are how many there. The way we had visualize it is we create like 4 groups amongst ourselves. Uh, but yeah, the number is not too many. I think we can create 2 groups, and the formation of these groups, I think the ideal way, because we want to see things from different sides. We know how to spell the word I. I. This one. How is it spelled? E Y E. Let's spell it from backwards. Yeah? E Y E, isn't it? Still the same thing. What am I trying to say? When we see things from a singular point, we can be going forward or we can be going. The same high, if we add an S, they become many. It only makes sense if you you know spell it going forward. It's eyes. The other way, it's SE. Is there a word like that? Yeah, it is. So the question here is, in the formation of groups, we want to see this from different sets of eyes. Okay,